I know that you're wondering why I call this show Goggles Off. No, it's pretty straightforward. Well, it implies you're reviewing retro games with a critical mindset. Oh, okay. I see how it is. So you can just do my job for me, is that what you're saying? No. Well, actually, yeah, I probably could. What? My PTSD. PTSD? What are you, a Tumblrite? I don't know, such a big problem. Entitlement. Oh, if you have another game... Fuck this! No! I'm done! I'm gone. Fuck this, no. I'm out of here, man. Fuck you. How's it going? This is Pokey and it's okay. I forgive you. So, when I get into these talks about ye old games, even with games that aren't that old, I always hear a variation of the non-argument, nostalgia goggles. Hey, you know what game was this shit? Out of this world. Well, no, you see, cinematic platformers. Okay, you're not even trying to understand now, are you? The point I'm trying to illustrate is that I play these games to give them an objective critique. Not just to say, it's better because it's old, because that argument is just as invalid as, it's better because it's new. And I think Alundra is a shining example for my ability to look back on a game that I used to love and realize that the floorboards have grown awfully creaky. Also, the door squeaks, and the wallpaper's ripping. Stove works, though. Before I get started, let me preface this video by telling you that I love Alundra. Trust me, in a bit that's going to sound facetious. Stick around. You're bound to think that this game is the devil in my eyes. Alundra was pieced together by a group of people you're most likely unfamiliar with. Okay, once upon a time, Climax Entertainment, Landstalker happened. A bunch of the team that had worked on Landstalker, and the tragically titled Lady Stalker, bailed and formed Matrix Software. Back in the day, they pushed out PSX and PS2 titles. Anymore, the most they do are mobile ports or iterations of already existing IPs. I'd say it's a shame, but so far, they've really only shown potential and nothing more. In fact, they've been showing potential for nearly 20 years. But coming from me, that's not a slight against Matrix Software. If anything, I say it as a compliment to hopefully pique someone's interest into seeing what I see in them. That being said, Alundra is a textbook example of blatant cloning. See? What did I tell you? No, that's not true. Entirely. See, in their heads, they were making a spiritual successor to Landstalker. See, look, it's got the backpack. And some platforming. Meanwhile, in Reality Land, this was essentially the PSX's answer to A Link to the Past. And now I'll take a moment to inundate you with the Holy Scripture drawing parallels between the two. Good evening, sir or ma'am. Have you heard the good news? Would you like me to read to you from the Holy Alundra? There's only enough room for 144,000 clones of Zelda. No. I'm not going to be doing this. You're a smart enough cookie to spot the similarities out on your own. And you know what? I don't even care that it mostly copy and paste Zelda's mechanics. Yeah, that's right. I actually adore this aspect. I don't even consider this shit to be a downside. I love A Link to the Past. More games should be like A Link to the Past. This is probably one of the strongest selling points of Alundra. It's basically more of A Link to the Past goodness. If you don't count A Link Between Worlds, which you should because it's fucking rad. Alright. Let's try to sell it on its own merit. Nah, I'm just riding you. You know I love you, Alundra. You old dirty cocksucker. Alundra likes to follow through with the old school trope of the snake that swallows its own tail. Progression through exploration, through progression, through exploration, through yada yada yada. This design philosophy is one of the most perpetually rewarding feelings you can give a player, or so I feel. Only second to high skill ceiling beat 'em ups and waifu simulators. I love this shit. I'm a sucker for this peanut butter and chocolate self-sustaining game design. It keeps progression interesting to keep exploration interesting. One of the most rewarding moments in terms of item acquisition is when I got my greasy pizza-covered palms on the fire wand. Oh boy, what a day. See, they kept throwing these thorny bushes in front of you, in front of important or suspicious-looking areas. You knew immediately what was coming down the line for you. Especially if you cheated and read ahead in the manual, you slick bad boy, you. Oh gee, if only there was a more convenient weapon in my arsenal. Oh my god! And then you get it. You get that magnificent fire wand in your quivering hands. And then you feel it. You feel the lust for power, pain, and pleasure inseparable pulsate through your soul. Then you realize the world is full of sin. It can only be cleansed through fire, for the night is dark and full of terrors. Praise the Red God. The same can be said about most other items you come across. Big old blocks in your way? Fuck it up with a flail, then do a dance. A flail dance. Yeah girl, you like this dance, don't you? Hot things. Frost Wonder. Potted dirt, spring bean, tricky terrain, boats, You get the picture. There is a solution for every problem. Novice Charm even gives you the solution to dying at one point in the game. But we'll make a callback to that later. It's not simply getting these items to progress through terrain that solely feels rewarding. It's what you find by doing so. Life Vessels and Gilded Falcons have to be pried out of some pretty sticky situations. Gilded Falcons in turn net you rare and powerful items. Actually, the most powerful weapon in the game comes from collecting all 50 Gilded Falcons. It's this neat little thing called the Spirit Wand. While it technically isn't God mode, its power is that you can spam spells ad infinitum and never run out of magic points. Now, this footage you're looking at right here isn't mine. This is, TrueCat. The reason why this isn't my footage is because I never got the Spirit Wand. You'd think that collecting all 50 Gilded Falcons would be easy enough, right? You'd think, oh, I just gotta get good gear, go hiking, or dig through dangerous crevices. Sure, easy enough, but that's not the case. See, one Gilded Falcon is found inside of Olin's dream. Oh yeah, you can dreamwalk, BT-dubs. I'll explain more about your invasive voyeurism later. See, you gotta kill these Merg. When you kill them, the chest drops. That chest has the Gilded Falcon. Here's the thing though. This was my experience trying to get that chest. Yeah, Alundra can be a dick of a game. If you don't snag that chest quick enough, Septimus pulls you out of the dream, whether if you want to leave or not. At first, I didn't reset to go back for this chest. I had no idea that it would be a Gilded Falcon, let alone I didn't even know what the fuck a Gilded Falcon was or what the fuck it did. It wasn't until later when I was looking up all the Gilded Falcon locations that I found out that that was one of them. At this point, I was already balls deep in the coastal cave. And at this point I was also growing fatigued by the game's inconsistent platforming, so going back 20 hours for one Falcon was not an option. The final 3 of the Falcons are also found from the shitty minigames you can play at the pub. I didn't bother to grab these either because the minigames were the antithesis of fun. They were, not fun. Oh no, yeah, no, don't mind me. I don't need to be having fun right now. No, really. Another clump of shit that lacked the fun aspect was something that had the audacity to call itself a mechanic, the platforming. It starts off innocent enough. In fact, it even grows well within its limitations. They kept adding more to the platforming challenge, and it's highly welcomed early on because of its simplicity and satisfaction. Then, just like Marlon Brando, Alundra grew too big for his village people leather getup and had to resort to wearing a muumuu because holy fuck, were you high when you made half of these asshole jumps? You know what? You see this? This jump right here cost me my game back in the day. I was friends with that kid. You know, that kid. See, I didn't know I had to make it to that southern ledge from the last pillar. And what you most likely can't fathom from the shot is that there's a continual blast of wind that fucks up the trajectory of your platforming. After a few hours of not knowing what the fuck was going wrong, that friend said he'd borrow it with my memory card and get past that part for me. This was the 90s. We had shit like sharing is caring beaten into our heads. Supple and naive 11-year-old me thought, sure, we're friends. You'd never f me over like a little chick cunt, would ya? Nah, you wouldn't. I don't make bad judgment calls on people and I don't even know what a judgment call is. Long story short, the little shit moved, packing my copy of Alundra and my memory card with him. That memory card, by the way, had my greatest playthrough of Final Fantasy Tactics and Crash Bandicoot 2 on there. What makes this platforming so bad though is just how inconsistent it feels to begin with. I always felt like the same directional input and the time pressed down on the jump button had differing results. I don't know, it could have been my copy of Alundra, or I could just be bad. Either way, platforming 3/4 of the way through was beginning to not jive with me, only growing worse as time went on. And that's problematic for me, because platforming is the crux of each and every dungeon. And when you fail during a platforming puzzle, especially later on in the game, the punishment is harsh. The punishment is that you have to start all over. It's a painful punishment. Oh, I'm sorry. No, fun. It's okay, you can go. I didn't mean to try to keep you here for too long. I still love this game. It's a shame too, because they do show off their creativity with their platforming sections. The problem is that the more creative and unique they got, the more room there was for it to just not feel right. There is one dungeon late in the game that just keeps the platforming simple. That's the Great Tree. It goes without saying that it feels like one of the tightest dungeons in the game, but I'm saying it anyway. Really, it shows that you don't always have to try to outdo yourself. I'm not against Matrix designs for getting fancy with their platforming, but they seem to stop working within their limitations as if it became dartboard design roulette. Even though you hear me shitting on the platforming, that's not to say that the rest of the controls suffer like the shattered heart of an overly enamored anime enthusiast who finds out that their chronic nosebleeds at the sight of a female that they're highly attracted to. that what they've learned from their 8 years of non-stop anime marathoning turning out to be lessons on reality. Not that I'm speaking from personal experience. Because they're not. The rest of the controls are actually pretty tight. The dashing takes a little getting used to, but that's because you aren't meant to be in control of it. Dashing was put in primarily to get you through a straight line and out of danger's way as fast as possible, so you won't be using it all too often, but it'll come in handy. By now, you're probably pretty used to how I get into depth about combat. I'm sad to report, however, that Alundra has no depth in this particular chisel of the proverbial sculpture. I'll be the first to admit that that's not a bad thing. I mean, there is a certain primitive joy you can attain from playing a game where the extent of the combat is as simple as smash the square button to clear the screen. Or you can press circle once in a while. Spend some time with that spell scroll of yours. Really, the extent of Alundra's combat complexity is, can you hit it? Yeah. Does he have a shield? Yep, no problem. Oh dude, watch out, he's going to hit you with his he's gonna hit you with his balls. Willow bow. Bro. Shit dude, there's so many. Oh yeah, watch this. Magic. Holy fuck, it's the ancient dragon guardian Wilda. What are you gonna do about Wilda? Wait, check this out. Novice charm. So this may be raising some questions. A, are those tits on that male dragon named Wilda? Yes. Yes, they are. And B, are all boss fights so arbitrary that you just walk into their attacks and take no damage throughout? No, they aren't. In fact, the boss fights are a highlight for Alundra. Wilda is a special case though. He's the big boss at the end of the Torla Mountain segment, which is super late in the game's story. But by the time you reach the halfway point, you can actually obtain an item from Sifa's house. Just waltz down into his basement, light the torches in the right order, and then snag Novice Charm. In fact, right before you proceed to the final dungeon, Sifa will just tell you the necessary order. It's a little arbitrary by this point, but there's some merit to holding off. See, between Novice Charm and the Charm Boots, you're pretty much immune to all damage in Torla Mountain, aside from walking directly into lava turtles. So, it's pretty disingenuous to tell you that Wilda is easy by default, since that assumes that you've not only grabbed the charm, but also donned it for the fight. I did because, fuck it, the rest of the bosses were pretty fun to be honest. They aren't the most creative you've ever seen, but they provide some pretty interesting challenges to dissect. Not to dissect in terms of interesting patterns, but along of what hits the hardest, which is typically a spell. Most of the time a boss favors one spell more than the others. So now you may be asking, the combat is decent, boss fights aren't much of an ass clincher, and the platforming feels like it was programmed by Alessa Gillespie. Does anything stand out as indelible? Why yes, it does. Pokey responded to the inquisitive viewer. The puzzles in each dungeon are very well designed. This is what people walking away from Alundra should remember. Most puzzles are completed through keen observation and intense forethought. Some are trial and error, which means they're shit, but most of them either stumped me through sheer logic or made me pay close attention to the environment, and really, that's how it should be done. Today, most puzzles begin and end with, do you have your puzzle vision on? Good boy. Follow the breadcrumbs, you corrigible little monkey you. Some even dare to challenge your mind as to see if you have eyes, or even go so far as to challenge your shape sorting skills. Well, to be fair, Alundra does some of that shape sorting shit too, but then they become assholes about it and have the goal to turn it into an actual puzzle. Have I driven home the point that puzzle solving in Alundra is fucking sweet yet? No? Okay, then I'll use my favorite dungeon as an example. And then you can say I have such bad taste for loving this one in particular so much. So, at one point of the story, you have to dreamwalk into the head of a single twin. With the two of them asleep at once, you can traverse their connected dream to travel from Anoa to the Great Tree. The puzzles in this dungeon are a matter of reversing pattern recognition. So if you see a button sequence in one side of the dream, it's the exact opposite on the other side. There's even a portion involving mirrors where you have to solve the other side's puzzle from where you stand. Keeping in mind that everything is the... anyone? That's right. Exact opposite, both in terms of patterns and position. Shit like this was super cool while keeping it simple. Only once did I ever feel like a puzzle section felt like a time waster. Lo and behold, it was directly connected to platforming itself. The soundtrack that accompanies your adventures while you're getting frustrated or enlightened also helps. It's nothing incredible by any means, but I still have the overworld map music stuck in my head. The same goes for these puzzles and platforming sections. You'll be stuck on these for quite some time, especially with the frost pillars. It's important for the music to not grate on your ears. Thankfully, it doesn't. Hell, on that note, the sound effects used in combat aren't half bad either. They're also nothing really to brag about, I mean, they're no Vagrant Story. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. But really, I would be hard-pressed to bitch about the sound design at all. In all honesty, I'm just thankful that most of the dungeons have decent soundtracks, aside from the Great Tree. Curiosity might be kicking in now. So how exactly does all this fit together? I mean, you get the shing-shang, the bing-boom, the hip-hop, and the expertly crafted puzzles. Perhaps it should all be balled together in some sort of cohesive plot, maybe with a story. Or at least some dialogue? I don't know, just a word or two? I don't think this fat bitch knows. I can absolutely tell you, without a doubt, that the story is my favorite aspect of Alundra, 100%. But don't take that as a statement defending the awful dialogue. Why do our dreams turn to nightmares? Why do our own minds turn on us? Why don't we get basic cable here? Sorry, scratch that last one. Mother. I know father died in a terrible accident, but you think it's because he didn't believe in the gods? Nonsense, I say! What's the matter, Alundra? Having a little trouble advancing? Tense those scrawny neck muscles. I'll be needing to use your head. Lover boy. Bona has taken the ultimate bad trip. Yeah, the words that just sort of fall out of these people's mouths are kinda hokey and pretty fucking stupid. But that doesn't stop the plot from being nuanced and nearly expertly assembled. Oh, a Japanese story, huh? Does it contain copious amounts of deicide? No. Yep, of course, it's a JRPG. You know you're about to be taken on Glorious Nippon's crazy cozy deicide ride. Okay, now that I got that point out of the way, you sardonic son of a bitch, I can go on about how I absolutely adored this story. In short, you're a Christ figure who has to battle a Lovecraftian parasite that's fueled by man's capability to bring gods into reality. Also, you're an elf whom has the capability to dreamwalk and save people from their torment, or at least kill them in the process of trying. Whoops! And what would Alundra be if he wasn't joined by a female of the same race who could also join him on his dreamwalking adventures, and help provide the player with moralistic and competitive conflict? Not marketable to hormonal preteens. That's what he'd be. Fucking give her the deal, Alundra. She wants it. I like Mia though. It's a shame we never get to see her fight, because I often wondered if I would enjoy playing as her. All you get is a brief glimpse in her shoes by jumping on Alundra's head. Then you have the rest of the cast, that of which you'll get to know intimately, even if you don't want to. From Kingpin Naomi to Aline who suffers from DID, there's a wide palette of tropes that inhabit the village of Anoa. The flaking adhesive binding these dysfunctionals together is their faith. No, it doesn't matter what you believe. The town priest will force you to pray a thanks bud to their god anyway. And because praying to this particular god is so important for them, they believe that their ability to have inspiring dreams and creating with their hands are inherently linked. Once the spooky nightmares kick in, they attribute that to the gods being displeased with them, stealing away their ability to create. All the way through, the story revolves around two major introspective elements: worship and self-worth. Nearly all intelligent things you come across have or had gods, some of which you're directly interacting with. Now here's where I found my love for this story. See, in most games where you're sea-stepping your way across the globe, you're killing gods because they're evil cunts. Just a giant pack of dicks. Alundra has contrasted this method of motivational deicide. These gods and guardians actually welcome their death to help free the creatures who enslave themselves to their will. The time period you're in is an age where most gods have already fallen due to their hubris, including Melzus himself, the big baddie, being one of these gods who was deemed to be, dunked in a lake. What had preceded all of this were the gods being assholes. They'd battle each other for the humans' favor, rather than actually do the job they were summoned for. Like, I don't know, bless them with bad enemy AI. Holla fucking Luya! Because of this, the rational gods just sat back and watched their brothers kill each other, while humanity fell further into despair, losing faith in their own gods. Enter Melzus, the opportunistic dickbag that he is, who used this to take advantage and began to whisper sweet nothings into humans' ears, granting them AAA budget dreams. Now, what sets Melzus apart is, even though he gained strength from being worshipped, he isn't a god created by people. He's actually a space parasite right the fuck out of a Lovecraft short story. I wasn't just bullshitting earlier when I mentioned that. Because one of his idols was preserved by Ronin, the people of Anoa pray to him. But as they began to slack, he switched their dreams into nightmares to force more prayer. What he needs is to scare people enough to feed off their prayers so that he can return to his full power and live independently of their thoughts, thus allowing him to rise from Camp Crystal Lake and rain hell upon Earth. Yeah, are you confused yet? Does Melzus' existence or the logic behind how the gods function make any fucking sense to you? Well, if this broke your delicate little sensibilities about consistency, yeah, don't worry, you're not alone. This all brings us back to why the remaining gods and guardians are more than happy to be put down. They're challenging you as the releaser to see if you're strong enough to destroy Melzus in his still weakened state. Again, these are the rational gods. The ones who stood back and were like, well, shit, when they watched their peers destroy one another for human favor. Can I just emphasize that? These are the rational ones? Yeah, okay, makes sense. As the story progresses, the dynamic Alundra shares with the villagers of Anoa continues to evolve. They fluctuated from relief and hatred and everything in between. Seeing the cast react like this made them feel somewhat alive and consequential, despite their shitty dialogue. Because of that, I wound up having real feelings towards this cast. You end up spending enough time with the villagers you hate and love. Then you find that they have actual character arcs throughout the game. I mean, earlier in the game I had already learned to hate Gilles, Gustav, and Aline, but it wasn't until later that I found sympathy for them, and their issues that they were taking out on me. You'll find that anyone you have conflict with has a redeeming quality, either in their character or after a revelation. With some of them, after you failed them, you may even feel a little heartbroken. You can imagine how much worse it is when you fail those whom you actually love. There were several times I felt my heart sunk because I was failing as these people's savior. It's a little hard for me to sell Alundra as a typical flower-farting, sugar-pissing JRPG action-adventure game. I mean, the art lures you in with that feeling, but it's a bait-and-switch, kind of like how The Mark of Kree was. It's a tale of very basic life lessons. No matter how hard you try and struggle, many things are just out of your control. You'll rise above adversity, but not without losses. And you'll have to take those losses to the grave. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that beneath the hard-shell candy coating is a layer of thick milk chocolate. But beneath this is a chewy core of crumbled up tissue stained in blood, tears, and sweat. I know. Appetizing. So, is Alundra worth getting into 17 years late? I'm gonna say yes. Honestly, there's people that play through it to this day that don't suffer with the platforming as much as I do, so maybe I'm just bad. But even then, that didn't stop me from seeing this game through to the end. The simple combat, mind-straining puzzles, and the surprisingly involved story is what drove me. And really, it's a simple game. It hardly feels outdated. In fact, I'd even argue that when I failed jumping portions I hated the most, causing me to have to go back and try again from the beginning, it was refreshing compared to today's lack of punishment. There you have it. You should play Alundra, or A Link to the Past. Either way, it's not a waste of time. Alright, before we sign off, I want to make a few shoutouts. You see this guy right here? This is Chaseface Show. Right now, he's mostly focusing on his long-form videos. The first one I saw was his rad review of Ace is Wild. Think you guys should check it out. Then we got my boy Vash TSB. This punk bitch has been on the roll with his DMC4 videos, and even squeezed out a Transistor review. If you want to see some next-level motivation, he's your man. And last but not least, we have Brett Hicks. He's a hodgepodge of things. He also makes a variety of videos. It hurts. He mostly does video diaries. You should give the sexy beast a shot. Alright, I'm out. If you decide to follow me on the shipbird, be aware that I am prone to endlessly talking about things that excite me. And then there's this piece of shit.